What's happening, y'all? This is Andrew from Mirror Music 99, and I want to try something a little bit different this evening. I was just listening to Jay-Z's interview with Gayle King for 60, I think it was for 60 minutes, maybe it was for, whatever, it was with Gayle King for sure. And they were talking about the Book of Hove and the library and that kind of thing. But they were playing his music in the background, and I've listened to the Black Album a bunch of times, but they were playing a piece of Encore where he says, Young H.O. raps Grateful Dead. And that kind of like jumped out at me when I heard it this time. I've heard it a bunch of times, but it jumped out at me when I heard it this time. And I was thinking, like, we've done on this channel a podcast episode where we compared Neil Young's Old Man and Once a Man, Twice a Child by Nas. And then Nas put out a song called Bokeem Woodbine, where he calls himself Neil Young with a bounce, right? And I like to think those are connected. They're probably not, but the idea of rappers, MCs calling themselves something like another musician from another genre, like Neil Young in Nas's case, is interesting to me. So I want to explore in this video the idea that Jay-Z calls himself raps Grateful Dead. I want to explore a little bit what that means, or what I think he means by it, or at least what it could mean. And think about also, you guys are going to have to help me think through this, whether we think he's making a true claim, whether you think he's right or not. So first of all, I think we have to examine a possible metaphor there. I mean, I know the way he set it up is as a metaphor, but that the idea that the Black Album in 2003, where this song comes from, was supposed to be his retirement album, right? It was supposed to be where he's getting out of the game. So the idea that he's calling himself the Grateful Dead, is he's being grateful to be out of the game. He could mean it metaphorically like that, and not in a referring to the band necessarily, but just using that as a turn of phrase to mean that he's happy, he's grateful to be out, not dead, but like out of the game, right? But I think beyond that, I think it's a reasonable interpretation, but I also think beyond that, we should assume that Jay-Z, that Sean Carter, is smarter than that, and that he means this on multiple levels, right? So, but I also think we should presume that that there's not a whole lot of overlap between people who would call themselves Jay-Z fans and people who call themselves Deadheads or Grateful Dead fans. I mean, there are some. That Venn diagram is pretty tight, right? It's pretty small. So overlap is pretty small. So we have to assume, I guess, that he's not saying he's the Grateful Dead in a way that he's assuming that the people listening to the song, or his primary audience, is going to understand that he's referring to some intricacy of the Grateful Dead's music, right? So we've got to think about what are like the commonly known pieces of the Grateful Dead in popular culture. So what are those facets, and let's see if we can think of ways that those cross over with Jay-Z. First of all, we made a video comparing earlier Sugary, which is technically a Jerry Garcia song, but a Grateful Dead song with an Outkast song. And I had a lot of people in the comments of that video saying that the Grateful Dead was the greatest American band, and I think that's a good place to start. Now, that's questionable, right? I don't know that I would say that they're the greatest American band, but it's not an unreasonable thing to claim. I think you have to consider a few things when you're talking about that. Do you claim the great R&B groups as bands? I mean, are the Isley Brothers a band? Are Earth, Wind, and Fire a band? Are the Jackson 5 a band? Are the Supremes a band? Are we calling them bands? I think we also have to consider whether, like, lead singer and the blank count as bands. Are Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers a band, or is that a vehicle for his solo stuff? Are Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band a band, or is that a vehicle for his solo stuff? Are Prince and the Revolution a band, or is it just a vehicle for Prince, right? So it's questionable whether the Grateful Dead are the greatest American band. You guys can argue that in the comments if you want to. But I think very much in the same way that that he that the Grateful Dead could be considered, or reasonably considered, one of the great American bands, that Jay-Z could be calling himself one of the great American MCs. And no disrespect to the MCs from around the world, but if you're calling yourself the greatest American MC, you're calling yourself the greatest, period, right? I mean, that's just part of, and it's in the title too, the Grateful Dead, great. You could make that metaphor too. I am going to defer to Coop and According to Hip Hop on this one. I don't know enough about hip hop history and enough about that world to be able to make a solid claim about whether Jay-Z or Nas or Big or whoever is the greatest MC. I know they would say that Nas is, and I tend to agree because I trust his judgment. I've known Coop since we were 15, so I trust his judgment on that. But Jay-Z is certainly among the group of people where it's not an unreasonable claim to claim he's the best or one of the best. So that is a crossover between there and him calling himself Rap's Grateful Dead. Grateful Dead's also known for playing lots of shows all around the world and being a very touring heavy band, right? And that actually fits with the line that he says right after this, I'm Young H.O., Rap's Grateful Dead, back to take over the globe, now break bread, I'm in Boeing Jets, Global Express, right? So he is saying, I think he's consciously referencing the touring, the jet setting, the going around the world part of his life and the Grateful Dead's life. I think that is a reasonable connection to draw too. Grateful Dead is known for their longevity. I mean, they were formed in the 60s. They were still playing shows in some form, even after Jerry Garcia's death, even up to through this year, with John Mayer at this point. But they called themselves a Dead and Company. But like, it's still the same ethos, the same idea anyway. I don't know if Jay-Z was arguing that he's got longevity in the game, I guess. I mean, I know, or as I understand, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but like he started popping his head up as an MC in like late 80s-ish, right? But his real like rise to fame was mid-90s. And he's making this song, Encore, in 2003, right? So that, without crashing on him at all, saying he does not have the same longevity as the Grateful Dead, right? So, but I also don't think that's what he's arguing, really. So that's a thing we can probably cross off of our list. So the other thing that Grateful Dead are famous for is their iconography, right? One of them's in the thumbnail for this one, the skull with the lightning bolt down the middle and the blue and the red, right? There's that. There's the dancing bears that are all like holding hands or whatever. There's the dancing skeletons holding hands with the little top hats and whatever. Those are Grateful Dead iconography, and I think those are, and the tie-dyed shirts too, actually. So I mean, there's lots of things that go along with that band that are known outside of the music, right? Now, I'm not familiar enough with Jay-Z and enough with his iconography. I know he has like the hands, right? But are there other like symbols that go along with him? You guys tell me in the comments for that too. Whether there are other icons or iconography or images or whatever that go along with him and his music that are popularly known. I don't know them, so I don't think they are as famous in the wider culture as the Deadhead imagery. I don't know. Maybe that's just my ignorance. So let me know about if there are any of those things too. Now, the Grateful Dead also are known for their like ties into drug culture, particularly marijuana and psychedelics, LSD. So they are known for their like, not using necessarily, but for like how those kind of interplay with the shows and with the experience of going to a Grateful Dead show. Now, I don't know enough. I mean, I know Jay-Z has been pretty open about his rise and his drug, his relationship with the drug world. But I don't think there's a ton of crossover in like how those things are expressed in the music or in the fandoms, really. I don't think that the drug thing is as important or as forward-facing, perhaps, in Jay-Z's world as it is in the Grateful Dead. Maybe tell me I'm wrong about that. Again, I'm not as familiar with his music, so this is mostly like I'm trying to talk my way through how, like, what Hugh could be referring to by calling himself the Rap's Grateful Dead. So we'll see. Finally, also, they are famous. Grateful Dead is famous for being a jam band. That is, being a fusion of many styles of rock and funk and blues and soul and jazz, and kind of melding all those together in an interesting and new way. I mean, he says in the line, Jay says in the line before this, "Hear me rap is like hearing G rap in his prime." And he says, is it December 4th? It's one of the songs on this album too. He says he's got this flow for this song, and there's another one for the next. Tell me what song that is, please. My memory is not great for that. So I do think there is some crossover in that way, where he's taking lots of different styles and melding them together in a new and interesting way too. But also, as I understand it, well, take a step back. The Grateful Dead are also known for jamming out songs, having long songs, but also never playing a song the same way live twice, right? You're not going to have a note for note reenactment in any 2 consecutive shows, which is why a lot of people wanted to go to so many different shows, other than the camaraderie and the family and all that stuff that went around the shows. They also were hearing something different every night, right? They wouldn't play the same songs every night, and even if they did play the same songs, they would play them differently every night. So you would get a new experience every time. I know Jay-Z famously doesn't write his bars down. He like memorizes them and spits them. But some of that may be freestyling a little bit too. Help me out with, I may be wrong about that too. But I think there's enough like touching points there between what the Grateful Dead do, between freestyling and jam banding, to say there's some overlap there, right? Anyway, that's a few connections, at least, I think. I don't think it's completely unreasonable for him to call himself the Rap's Grateful Dead, but I want you to tell me in the comments what you think too. Is Jay-Z the Rap's Grateful Dead? Tell me what you think. And I want to hear both from people who consider themselves Jay-Z fans and people who consider themselves Grateful Dead fans. And tell me whether you think this is a reasonable claim to make. Also, tell me if this was interesting to you and you want to hear more like this. So take care of yourselves, y'all. I'll see you next time.